If I saw you in heaven, would it be the same? If I saw you in heaven, I must be strong and carry on, 'cause I know I don't belong here in heaven. Would you hold my hands if I saw you in heaven? Would you help me stand if I saw you in heaven? I'm on my way, no matter day, 'cause I know I just can't stay here in heaven. Would you know my name if I saw you in heaven? Would it be the same if I saw you in heaven? I must be strong and carry on, 'cause I know I don't belong here in heaven.
In the world would you be able to do what John just did for us? And you probably just observed the best part of the evening, so now I have to live up to this, the pressure of it all. My name's Myrah, and I like to talk with my hands, so I'm going to put the mic down if you're able to hear me. I have not had a problem with projecting in the past, so I didn't think it would be an issue. But my name's Myrah. I am your interim superintendent, and for the past 4 years, I also worked in the district, and I served as the director of curriculum and instruction. So I've been around now, heading into my 5th year, my first year in this role. And I want to welcome and thank all of you for being here. Today, this evening, we're going to talk about a few different topics. First, we'll start with our focus plan and a little bit of information and an update on our 2 broad goals that we have related to the focus plan. Then I'll discuss a little bit about the fiscal management and operations of our school district. We'll talk about some recent successes. In fact, we won't just talk about it, we'll celebrate them. And we'll talk a little bit about the vision for the future of schools and for our students at Whitefish Bay. So to begin with, and I know you cannot read that fine print, and that's all right, but I just want you to see our focus plan, and there's a little poster of it here. A couple years back, we spent a good part of a school year developing this focus plan. And by we, I don't just mean the administration or the school board or even the staff. By we, I mean the whole Whitefish Bay community. We have focus groups. We had a strategic planning team that was comprised of community members, staff members. Within our focus groups, well over 100 citizens participated to provide feedback, essentially on what is our vision for Whitefish Bay schools and the students. And if we have that vision, how will we get the kids there? How will we function as a system in order to help our kids be successful? Within that focus plan, there are two main goals. One of them is related to academics. No surprise, that's pretty much the point of a school district is academics. So one goal is academic achievement and engaging 21st century learning. And I just want to read to you the more specific goal that we have in mind. Every student will meet or exceed comprehensive learning standards to promote future success within our global society. It's a lot to take on, but that's what we're charged with. And in order to have kids become really academically successful, you need a particular type of environment to help set up students for success. And so our second goal is about providing a supportive environment for the whole child. And the specifics of that goal read, every student will experience a caring, inclusive learning environment that supports the development of the whole child with balanced attention to physical, social, emotional, and intellectual well-being. So let's find out how we're doing toward those two goals. The school board approved those goals in January of 2012. So we're about a year and a half into this plan. Academic performance, how are we doing? Well, I have several examples to share with you. First, our 2013 ACT average composite score this year was 26.0. We're proud to say that that was the highest average in the state, and Whitefish Bay High School students typically score within the first, second, or third highest across the state. Obviously, that's quite an achievement, but I think what adds to that achievement is our participation rate is really high. 86.6% of our students this past year participated in that exam. Many school districts, it's about half their students. So the fact that we score so high with so many students participating is really quite a feat. And we're the only school district in Wisconsin who has had a composite score over 25.0 for 15 years in a row. Here's just a chart of that 10 years of the 15 years to show the scores and the strong participation rate. What I think will be interesting is that beginning next year, the ACT will actually serve as the state test for 11th graders. So right now, we typically have 13 to 15% of our population that does not participate. So I'm really interested to see, once we have all of our students taking that test, will we stay at that 25.0 rate or score or higher? Now that remains to be seen. What I am very confident of is we will still outperform the state by quite a bit, because if you think about it, if anywhere from 86 to 90% of our students on average participate, we already are achieving high scores, and we're not adding many potentially not college-bound students to the mix. Where many districts, if 50% of their students participate, and let's say their average is 20 or 21, like a state average, if now they have 50% more students taking that test, what will that do to their average? So I just think it'll be interesting in the next couple of years to watch the trends of the ACT. Another assessment that our students take is the WKCE, the Wisconsin Knowledge and Concepts Exam. And this is our current state test. It's given to students in 3rd through 8th grade and 10th grade. And our math and reading scores are what I'm going to highlight here. This past year of testing was the first year that some new, more rigorous standards or scoring applied to the WKCE. So now the NAEP, which stands for National Assessment of Educational Progress, rigorous national standards were applied to the WKCE. And the reason I mention that is typically in math, for instance, this is all of our students combined, the blue and the green scores. If you squish those together, that's the number of students who are advanced and proficient on the test. And typically in math for our district, we would have 90 to 95% of our students are advanced and proficient. When the NAEP scores were attached or assigned that criteria, our students, now we have about 70% of our students that are advanced and proficient. If I would have shown you a chart that showed the last several years at 90, 95%, and suddenly this year at 70%, it would look like, holy cow, what just happened to our students? So the chart being shown here for math, and the next one for reading, as if we had NAEPized, to coin a term, if we NAEPized the scores for the last 5 years, you can see our students' performance did not change. The criteria on the test did. And so over the last 5 years, we have performed in a very strong manner on this standardized test. Similar for reading, the blue and the green are advanced and proficient students. We're typically in reading across the district, adding all the 3rd through 10th graders together, we would score 85 to 90% proficient and advanced in the past, and on here about 60 to 65% once the scores were assigned to the NAEP criteria. Another standardized assessment that we provide our students, and actually this one, where the last one is a state test, we don't have a choice if you're in a public school. The MAP assessments, or Measure of Academic Progress, we do choose to give this to our students. The MAP assessment is relatively new. We just started using it last year for full implementation, 2nd through 9th grade. The year before, we piloted in just 2 grade levels, 2nd and 6th grade. And this is it's a nice test compared to standardized tests. Our state test, the kids take it in November. We don't get the scores until March. It certainly isn't used to guide instruction. It's more of a district level comparison that we use. We look at trends. The MAP assessment is very different because it's adaptive, computerized, and given 3 times a year. By adaptive, I mean there isn't a ceiling on the test. So for instance, with the state test, WKCE, a 4th grader takes the 4th grade test, and they can top out. If they're at the 99th percentile, they're a very strong student, but we don't know if that means they're strong at the 4th grade level. They could be at the 8th grade level, and we can't tell from that standardized state test. Whereas the MAP test, once a student, that 4th grader, starts taking the test, if they're struggling, the items get easier. If they're just whipping through those items, the items get more challenging. And then the results to the teacher are very timely. So the teacher, within a few days of the testing window closing, the teacher has detailed information, and that 4th grader, it may show they're at a 6th grade level, or they're at a 2nd grade level, and that can be used to drive instruction. Another benefit of the MAP assessment is that well over 80% of the school districts in Wisconsin use that test, so we can compare ourselves across the state. It's also nationally normed, so we can compare ourselves nationally. And it's linked to the Common Core state standards, which therefore is going to help prepare our students for the new state test called the Smarter Balanced Assessment. Because the MAP has only been used in our district for a year, we don't have trend data yet to share with you. However, we do know that consistently in every grade level assessed, our students perform nearly 10 points higher than national norms in achievement and growth. Now, I would say we expect that in our district for achievement. We tend to be a couple grade levels higher in achievement than the national norms. What is impressive is the growth, because oftentimes when you have really high-performing students, they don't necessarily grow or gain at a really fast pace. It's almost as though they're topping out. So the fact that our students are 10 points higher than national norms in achievement and that growth is really quite impressive. What I thought I'd also mention, because on the previous slide, that assessment is linked to Common Core state standards, and there's been so much in the press about Common Core lately. Just thought I'd take a moment to explain what Common Core standards mean to Whitefish Bay and how we integrate these standards. So I believe that there's some real misinformation out there. Some of the concern about Common Core is that, as I've heard it expressed, is that it's the federal government really imposing on our students and on our education system. It's interesting because the Common Core state standards really were not a federal mandate at all. They were developed by the state's superintendent, the chief state school officer, so the state superintendents and the Governor's Association. So very much state-driven. decided to put out these Common Core state standards. They commissioned experts across the world to write these high-level standards. States can choose to adopt the standards or not. 46 states have chosen to adopt the standards, and Wisconsin was actually the first state to adopt the standards. For Whitefish Bay, what that means is what we typically do with standards, whether they were our old state standards, which were pretty basic, or these new Common Core standards, is we use that as our foundation. So what we have found with Common Core, as compared to the last standards, they are more rigorous, and I think the beauty of Common Core is that our old state standards were primarily driven by content. So what information kids could learn, should learn. Common Core standards is the content, but it also is very skill-based. So it's the skills needed in careers and in college. They're infused into those standards. Now, I would contend in Whitefish Bay, we've talked that way for a long time. And so when I say we use Common Core as our foundation, we adopted Common Core a couple of years ago. We started integrating it into our English language arts instruction. This past year, integrating it into our math instruction. But in Whitefish Bay, we would never backtrack. So if we were already doing something that was more rigorous than Common Core, we wouldn't backslide. So the Common Core is the foundation for our curriculum, but I would say we really have Whitefish Bay standards that we implement. Another thing that I think is important to point out about Common Core standards is that when a district adopts those standards, they still have local control over the curriculum and how those standards are taught. So I think there's an impression that every classroom will look the same and we'll have cloned classrooms and we'll turn out little robots. It just isn't the case. These are high-level standards. They're internationally benchmarked. So those countries that outperform us, like Finland, for instance, I think it's setting up our country to better perform and compete internationally. And in Whitefish Bay, we've been there, so I don't think it's a stretch for us to infuse the Common Core. And my guess is those of you that have students in our school probably haven't noticed much of a difference yet. We hope that it will help us improve our instruction and our curriculum in terms of really helping kids to think more deeply. The Common Core standards help kids apply the knowledge and skills. So just a comment, because I know there's been controversy and a lot of press recently about Common Core. So I thought it was important for you to know how we have integrated the Common Core and using it as a foundation for our curriculum. So another indication of our academic achievement would be the new state report cards. So we have a lot of new accountability measures in the state, and one of them is represented by report cards that are put out by the Department of Public Instruction. Every school is given a report card, and that began last year, and now this year the state has provided the district an overall report card. So the report card is comprised of a few different areas, but essentially the scoring on the report card is comprised of student achievement in math and reading, student growth in math and reading, closing achievement gaps of minority populations in math, reading, and graduation rate, and then also on track for post-secondary readiness, which would be attendance rate, graduation rate, test participation. So in all of those areas, our individual schools have scored very high, and so did our district. Our schools are all exceeding expectations or significantly exceeding expectations. And our schools tend to be right close to that borderline. So for instance, last year, Cumberland significantly exceeded expectations. This year, the high school significantly exceeded expectations. The other schools are in the exceeds expectations. You can see on the screen, I can't read all of it, but the dark green, the light green, different areas of ratings. So our district report card shows we have an 82.0 score. It's a 0 to 100 scale, and that means we are exceeding expectations. We're actually 1 point away from significantly exceeding expectations. And just a little trivia about that. in looking up which school districts actually significantly exceeded expectations, which is a really hard level to reach, there were, I believe, 9 districts that hit that level, and the vast majority of those 9 are kindergarten through 8th grade districts. So some of the feeders into Nicolay, some of the feeders into Arrowhead, because that high school scoring is really rigorous. So there were not many K-12 districts, I think 2, that were in that significantly exceeds, and our district missed it by 1 point. So our students are doing very well academically, which likely would indicate we have a pretty strong emotional, social emotional environment for our students, but let's learn a little bit about that. So in order to have kids achieve in school, they need to attend. If they're not here, they're not going to learn much. Whitefish Bay schools have a 96.9% attendance rate, and this is among the highest rate of attendance in North Shore schools of comparable size. Academics is super important, but also research indicates if kids are involved with athletics, music, arts-related, academic co-curriculars, they'll be even more grounded in school. And fortunately, we have very high participation rates in our middle school and high school where it's tracked. And in fact, we have some of the highest rates of participation of the North Shore schools of comparable size. When we think about that second goal, our supportive environment and whole child goal on our focus plan, one of the strategies, I'll read it right off our poster, one of the strategies was to conduct strengths and needs analysis, including the development of a student feedback process. What we decided to do was, in terms of looking at our strengths and needs in this area, we went to the students first. So why not go right to the source and see what the kids think about their environment? So we did that last year, last winter, late winter, early spring. We surveyed our students from 2nd grade up through high school. Slightly different surveys at each grade level, so 2nd graders could understand the items as compared to our seniors. And some interesting results came from those surveys. So I'm sharing just a few strengths at each level. At the elementary level, so of a ranking of probably 25 items, the areas that were of greatest strength at the elementary level, which is probably predictable. My teachers want me to do my best in school. My teacher likes me. I feel safe at school, and my teachers care about me. It sounds like the type of environment we want our elementary kids to be in. At the secondary level, middle school, the same thing. These were the highest strength areas reported by students. When I put effort into my schoolwork, I am successful. Now, what I want to comment on this, it seems like that's logical, but for middle school students to recognize this, it's actually pretty significant because there's actually been research done, and in our country, in America, students tend to look at things as their achievement is almost like inbred. You'll hear people say, I'm not good at math. I would contend that's a bunch of baloney because everyone's brain has the power to do math, and if you put the effort into it, you will be able to achieve. In those higher performing countries that outperform the United States, they don't look at it as I'm good or bad. It's if I work hard enough, I can do it. And so, I mean, we try to help, I guess, support our teachers, but also promote in our teachers and parents. Try not to praise achievement. Try to praise the effort. If you say to a kid, great job earning that A, maybe they didn't have to work hard to earn the A. But if you say, wow, I can tell you worked really hard on that assignment, you must be proud. That's praising the effort, so they keep trying harder. So I just think the fact that the highest scoring area was middle school students recognizing if they put effort into their work, they'll be successful, we're that much further ahead. And that's something to be proud of. My teachers have high expectations for me to do quality work. I think that's excellent that kids recognize that high expectations are important. I think there's a lot of kids out in the world that would say that that's a bad thing. They don't want high expectations, and these kids recognize that high expectations are good. My teachers believe I can do well in their classes, and when I am at school, I feel safe. The high school is not, the students at the high school didn't report things much differently than the middle school students, so I like that consistency. I'm not mistreated by Whitefish Bay High School students. So in an era of where we hear a lot about bullying and harassment, our students are feeling, the vast majority of our students have not experienced that at our high school. I feel safe while at Whitefish Bay High School, and my teachers have high expectations for me to do quality work. So I think that says a lot about our school's environment. Areas of focus. So I would say relative areas of weakness, because quite honestly, all of the whole list of items from students were pretty strong, but there's always going to be the best on the list, and there's always going to be the lowest. So relative areas of weakness where we're looking for a common theme across the district that we'll focus on. Two things came up: treating others respectfully while fostering acceptance of all students. And so while you just saw that bullying doesn't tend to be a problem, or our students tend to feel safe, the masses do. But this would indicate to us that students are observing that perhaps not all kids are treated respectfully. So while they might not experience it themselves, there might be 2 kids or there might be 20 kids that they're observing something's not going right for these other students. And we can rest on our laurels and say the vast majority of every class is happy. But if it's 2 students, it's 2 students too many that aren't feeling respected. And if that was one of my kids or one of your kids, I think you'd be all over that. And that's how we want to be as a district, is every student should feel safe and respected. So that's a goal area that we'll be working on. Another goal area for us is providing students with an appropriate, challenging learning experience that is safe and supports the development of the whole child. So what does this get at? A couple of areas. One of the items that wasn't scored as high, kind of across the board, and it was phrased differently at the different levels, but essentially, like, my teacher knows how I learn best. So that indicates to us the work that we've been doing in professional development related to differentiation, really differentiating. We need to keep that going, and we need to apply that in classrooms. So students across the spectrum of kids who are just highly, highly gifted to students who have cognitive disabilities, a whole spectrum, every student deserves to be learning something new. And so that's something that we focus on. The other area is that whole appropriately challenging. If kids aren't challenged, they're bored, and they're not going to be learning. If kids are too challenged without the support, they'll give up. It's too hard. So we have to look at stress levels. You want just enough stress, because there's good stress. You want just enough stress that they're challenged in learning, but not too much where they're stressed out and they shut down. So that's something that we need to focus on as a school district and investigate a little deeper. So when it comes to this area of climate and the whole child, we started with the students. Now, as we're developing our school's plans and how to address these issues, we'll also consider what do we need additional information and what might that look like. Should we be surveying staff, for instance? Should we survey parents? Should we have focus groups? Do we look at some of these goal areas and go more in depth to gather more information? So as we're just starting work on this goal, we'll be considering all those different ways where we can make progress. We'll next look at fiscal and operations overview of our district. This is a chart that shows student enrollment history. So for this school year, our 3rd Friday, the official pupil count, we had 3,140 students that we provide service for. You can see by the chart, we've had a steady to increasing enrollment. So the lowest was in 2007-08 with 2,932 students up to this year. So about a 200 student difference. And what's beautiful about this in terms of this fiscal management of the district, state aid comes in on a per pupil basis. So the districts that have declining enrollment, those are the districts that you hear are needing to make budget cuts and cut programs, and class sizes are hugely increasing. The fact that our enrollment has been steady and increasing is a really good thing for a school district in terms of budgeting. General fund sources of revenue, so where do we get our money? I know you can probably see the size of the pie pieces, but might not be able to read all the details. That largest piece of the pie comes from property taxes. So thank you for that. Those of you that live here, I know your taxes are really high, but we hope we're putting it to good use. The second largest source of revenue would be state aid. So state aid property taxes comprise the biggest amount of money coming in. Another source, and I'll just kind of go around the pie, other sources, so up in the right-hand corner, that would be things like open enrollment, students that reside outside of our district and come in, and a certain amount of funding comes with those students. Also insurance dividends. Federal aid, we don't receive much in the way of federal aid, but we do receive Title I, II, and III, so that means math and reading money to help with interventions for struggling students in math and reading. Title II is some professional development funding. Title III, some funds for our pupils that do not speak English as a first language. Other local revenue sources, so about 2% of our district's budget comes money, the more fun part. You can see the substantial amount, the most significant amount of funding goes toward salaries and benefits. And on this chart, it would indicate that, or this graph would indicate that about 79% go toward salaries and benefits. Actually, it's more than that, because the other, called other objects, nearly 9%, that actually is money that is transferred to Fund 27, our special education fund. So much of special ed is funded through federal monies, but not all of it. So we have to transfer money from the regular district budget into the special ed budget, and some of that is also salaries and benefits. So the real picture is salaries and benefits is well over 80%, maybe 85% of our budget. Besides salaries and benefits, we also have a small percentage that goes toward insurance and casualty insurance. Non-capital objects, which is 2.6%, those are things like textbooks, instructional supplies, paper, copying machines. Capital objects are the bigger pieces of equipment, school vehicles, computers. Purchase services, about 7.7% of our budget goes toward purchase services, which are things like utilities, legal fees, contracted services, professional development. And then finally, a tiny little fraction, 0.2% goes toward cash flow borrowing. So that accounts for essentially all of the district's budgeting and expenditures. Another part of our operations for the last 10 years has been energy conservation. So we started a management program 10 years ago, and in that time we've reduced energy usage over 24%. And what does that mean? That means $2 million over 10 years have been saved. So $2 million that would have gone out to utility companies has stayed in the district about educating our students. So I think that's something really to be proud of. We have recent successes to celebrate. Each of our schools has certainly had lots and lots of things to celebrate, and I'm only going to highlight one for each building. The high school earned a Wisconsin Title I 2013-14 School of Recognition Award for high achievement. There are few schools that earn this across the state, and even fewer high schools. And in fact, under Bill Hinkle's leadership, he's in the audience today, the school achieved this, and Bill and Beth Sutherland, who's the instructional resource coordinator for the high school, they actually were in Madison today with Dr. Tony Evers, the state superintendent, receiving that award. And so there'll be press coverage of that, and I'm sure he had his picture taken. So we're really proud of Bill and his staff in high school for earning this achievement award. One of many things to be proud of at the middle school under Amy Levick's leadership is implementing the Bring Your Own Device pilot program. So in 7th and 8th grade science classes, students can bring their own technology, internet-ready device to help learning. If students didn't bring their own device, the school also has some. So we have netbook carts, we have some Chromebooks that students can use while in class. And all of this is happening. Also, something to celebrate is a reconfigured position titled our Kindergarten through 8th grade Technology Integrator. So where Patty Stannard is her name, where she used to teach standalone computer classes at the middle school, really to her credit to start talking about it, and then our technology committee that jumped on it and redesigned the position, rather than standalone learn how to use a computer, and it may not ever be applied back in the classroom. Now Patty's job is to work more with staff to help staff learn how to integrate using these devices in the classroom. So it's really a benefit to our students and how to apply the technology toward learning. And I think that's our approach as a district. It's not just about the nifty, cool devices. It's about how do those devices enhance learning. There are times where they don't. There are times where it's much more efficient for me to use a piece of chart paper than to turn on a piece of equipment. On the other hand, there's ways where technology devices, especially with internet access, can hugely enhance learning. So we're proud of the middle school for making that progress in their pilot. Lots of great stuff happens at Richards Elementary under Mark Tenorio's leadership. And just one thing to highlight is that community service is strong, as evidenced by student council raising over $1,200 on a bake sale. I don't know what you people are willing to pay for cupcakes, but and I'm sure they were just the healthiest. Perhaps that school might not be as healthy, but they're raising great funds. And what I also think is a nice touch is that the unsold bakery was donated to a food program at St. Benedict's Parish. So great community service for kids to learn. Under Jane Heffron's leadership, Cumberland has all kinds of wonderful achievements, but the one that we're choosing to highlight today is really pretty special. John Riley is a retired surgeon and a former columnist. This past August, the Journal Sentinel, he wrote an article for the Journal Sentinel that was highlighting and recognizing was the 50th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. And in his article, he actually identified Cumberland School as an exemplar for racial and religious integration and acceptance. So let me put on my old lady glasses here. I just want to read you a little bit of John's opinion article. So, how has King's hopes and vision for change fared in Milwaukee? Coincidentally, it was 50 years ago my wife and I chose to settle here. And over that span of time, we know some positive changes have come in local racist behaviors. And then he goes on to give some examples, but some that are closer to home. I can now drive through Grafton and not be escorted by the commandos and police. We know change has happened. When we can now shop at Brookfield Square and not be judged by the color of our skin, but by the content of our wallets, we know change has happened. And when we attend programs at Whitefish Bay Cumberland School and see risers full of God's children, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Jewish, non-believers, Protestant, Catholics, all join hands and sing, we know it's been a long time coming, but change has come. And after Jane Heffron read that, and it was touching to her, so she wrote a nice letter to John, and he wrote back, and I think I'm just going to take a piece of that, but I think it's meaningful. He also talks, or says, professes that Cumberland does reflect what Milwaukee and the United States should look like. And we can only hope that someday schools with Cumberland's excellence of administration and educators will be commonplace. So I think that's just a really nice, kind of gives me goosebumps, a really nice testament of what our schools are about and what we value. It's not just about academics, but also the relationships. And beyond each of our schools' achievements, we also celebrate successes as a whole district. For instance, you might not know this, but just a couple of weeks ago, Forbes magazine, the online version of Forbes magazine, listed Whitefish Bay, number 17, as the 20 best schools for your buck. So I'll go back to your high taxes. Although your taxes are high, apparently across the whole nation, we're in the top 20 for the schools for those high tax dollars. Safety and facilities. We have a lot of proactive things in place for safety within our schools. We run fire drills, we run lockdown drills, we have locked doors, etc. But something to celebrate is an additional proactive safety measure was installed at each school this summer. So we have an audio-visual buzzer system at each entryway. Now I know as a member of the public it may be an extra annoyance to you. You walk up, you used to be able to just walk in the office door, and now you have to buzz and wait and so forth. And while that's a nuisance, if you think about just that split second, that if it was a bad guy, what could that mean? So if someone was coming in irate and ready to yell and scream, even just that moment of pushing the buzzer and waiting, it could calm the situation down. Worst case scenario, if a bad guy was zooming in with a gun ready to start firing, that door does not have to be unlocked. Realistically, they could break through the glass, they could shoot their way in, but it's enough time that the office can see there's danger and get the school in lockdown. So I just think that's something to celebrate, that while you never anticipate, you never expect the worst to happen, we're acting in a proactive manner to prevent any tragedies. The Recreation and Community Education Department, which is run through our school district in Whitefish Bay, initiated an in-house before and after school care program at our schools, both elementaries, and enrollment is strong, approximately 160 children. This program was put together in relatively short order, and it's been really successful. Children are happy, families are satisfied. As a side benefit, it's actually a profit maker, so we're bringing in revenue on it because of this. And I would say maybe one of the best benefits, not only is it convenient for our families that it's on site, but it's also linked. It's a stronger linkage between our teachers and our curriculum and this before and after school program. So that can only help our students. District staff was reorganized. That doesn't necessarily sound like something to celebrate, but it really is, because when we had our Director of Human Resources and Special Services resign in August, when Mark Capocious left, what we do is we don't just necessarily go ahead and rehire. We really look at what are the new needs of the district. So the current needs indicated, we did not need as many man-hours going into human resources as we once did. However, the pupil services piece, we really felt like there was a need for stronger service in that area. So we took that one position, did some redesigning, and we now employ a full-time Director of Special Education and Pupil Services and a part-time Human Resources Manager. And we feel like we're better meeting the current needs of students, staff, and organization.